محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له اشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله ارسله بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعه وأرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد واهتدى ومن يعصهما فإنه قد غوى وإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا إن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن خير الأمور لوازمها وشر الأمور محدثاتها كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم القرآن الكريم في سورة ملك بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور صدق الله العلي العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بآياته وتكريمه. My dear brothers and sisters, those of you who track the emails that are coming from the masjid, inshallah, will have noticed that I've picked a topic today as a reminder for myself and all of us, one which we tend to shy from. I'm trying to remind all of us, and particularly myself, of the need for us to be positively looking at, addressing, and preparing for one of the most significant realities that we have to confront, and that is the reality of death. كل نفس ذائقة الموت ثم إليه ترجعون, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it crystal clear for all of us that every soul shall taste death, and then there is the return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This fact that we have to die, that I have to die, sometime and perhaps soon, it is an absolute reality, one which is conclusive, and yet one which we generally do not desire to confront, and we are generally not prepared for. According to our faith in Islam, death is not an end to our existence, but a beginning, a transition from our mortal life here to the everlasting life of the hereafter. In essence, our death is the gateway to the actual purpose of our creation, the ultimate purpose, the means to confirm the results and the fruits of our life's labors before we enter our eternal existence. Consequently then, our life is to be lived in preparation for death. And yet we end up, and I point the finger at myself, first, we end up being quite apprehensive of death. We do so perhaps because of what we believe are the uncertainties of death and what lies beyond, when it should be the other around, because we are the ones who have been given in explicit detail the absolute confirmation of what actually lies beyond our life and what is to happen after our death. The preparation for that final day and the hereafter is part of a key pillar of our belief and our faith. The belief in Allah, His malaika, His revealed books, His appointed prophets, His qadr and decree, and His day of judgment and the hereafter. The Yawm al-Akhir, the final day, the last day, the day of standing up, the day of separation from the worldly life to the lasting afterlife, the day of awakening from the sleep of the after death, the day of judgment, of reckoning before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His justice, where we hope that His rahmah prevails over His justice so that we become deserving of a blissful life in the hereafter. This death that we tend to be afraid of, then, let us be reminded it is a necessary, it is a critical transition and pathway for all of us to the afterlife. The traditions refer to death as a bridge over which, at our destined time to transfer from this world to the next, we all shall cross to reach our goal of the afterlife. Death is referred to as a shedding of the clothes, the trappings of this world in order to reach the afterlife. It is referred to as the extending sleep which leads to the afterlife. Each night, let us be reminded as we sleep, our soul is temporarily separated from our body. And death is the same sleep, yet it marks an extended period. The separation which releases us, liberates us completely from the confines of this world. And every breath that we take, each passing day then is a step closer to death and closer to our reality. And a key aspect of that reality is we are returning then back to our Creator, to our Owner. The Quran reminds us in the last verse of Surah Kahf. So whoever desires to meet his Lord, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ, should do good deeds and not associate anyone in the worship of his Lord. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, very clearly in the verse in Surah Baqarah, where He indicates, verily, we belong to Almighty Allah, and verily to Him shall we return. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And we must be reminded, brothers and sisters, when destined by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala charges His appointed angel to seize the soul of a dying person. It will happen to us. It shall happen to each one of us. The commissioned angel of death seizes the soul, the entire personality of man, and then releases us from the captivity of the body to be carried to the divine presence. In Surah Al-Sajdah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this clear. The angel of death, who is given charge of you, shall take your soul, and then you shall be brought back to your Lord. And the Prophet ﷺ repeatedly reminded us of the destroyer, he said. Remember the destroyer of worldly pleasures, death. He said, remember death 20 times in the day and night as a means of being rewarded like a shaheed. And he said the most intellectual man is one who remembers death the most. In Surah Mulk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us one important reasoning for this. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. He is the one who created death and life, and to reveal as a test to you in order to reveal which of you is best in deeds, and He alone is overpowering and all-forgiving. Note the reminder that the purpose for our creation here, or creation of life and death, as a test to reveal our goodness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another place makes it clear, وَمَا خَلَقْنَا الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that we have created you except for worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We connect the two, and then we realize that the worship of Allah, the doing of goodness, is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the reason for our creation. And in this verse, it is very interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةِ. He refers to the creation first of death, and then refers to His creation of life. There is significance in that we need to be very aware that the true life that is to come comes only after I have transitioned and passed the stage of death. And given this reality, then, brothers and sisters, we must be prepared to address death. For us, for our loved ones, those around us in the community, not out of fear alone, there has to be fear, but out of significance and preparation, out of respect and veneration and awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His reality of death, when He says that I have created you and I shall call you back. And let us be reminded that we have very brief contacts with death, briefly when we see our friends and relatives die, and there is some exposure to the rituals of the ghusl, the janaza, salah, and the burial. But too often, brothers and sisters, we shy away. I shy away from the reality of death, the one that is approaching all of us all the time. And we must treat then this approaching death as a routine reality of life, which demands preparation from all of us. So, I want to remind myself and all of us that this issue of death should not be treated as something as macabre and something of horror and sadness and grieving. Let us start putting a different twist in our eyesight, in our thinking about death, as something that is a reality, it happens to us, it is going to happen, and it is an important transition, and let us keep talking about it and preparing about it. And the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his messenger encouraged us to constantly contemplate death and be prepared for it. This is a sign of our goodness and our faith. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu once asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, who is the most wise and most prudent among the people? And the Prophet ﷺ responded, those who are most aware of death and prepare themselves for it. Those are the wisest of people and will have honor in this world and a generous reward in the hereafter. The Prophet ﷺ said, you should remember the reality that brings an end to all of this world's joys and pleasures, death. So the point I'm making for myself and all of us, brothers and sisters, is contemplation of death with an understanding that I have to prepare for it, and that this will be a part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's purpose of creation and His testing for us. So there are some essential aspects of preparation, including, of course, what is to be done upon death and how one mourns and what are the appropriate avenues for condolences. What does one do when facing the death of a loved one? Let us begin with recognizing that we are to show patience and acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. Last Friday there was a lady who passed away from our community, and I was there attending, and it was a reminder because some of the lady's mother was distraught, could not bear the sadness, and they were coming close to wailing and doing things loudly. And it is difficult at those times console the people, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to go back to us and remind ourselves this is a reality, we need to be prepared for it. So in all cases of hardship, of misfortune, of loss, including death, we are commanded as believers, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin. O you who believe, seek help from Allah in steadfastness and prayer. And lo, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient, with the steadfast. And perhaps the best tradition that profoundly reminds us of this concept is the one from the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, how wonderful is the affair of the believer. For his affairs are all good. If something good happens to him, he is thankful, and that is good for him. If something bad happens to him, he bears it with patience, and that too is good for him. So brothers and sisters, we need to keep this in mind. And then when we come into mourning and grieving, remembering that Islam prescribes a 3-day mourning period for loved ones, in all cases except for the passing away of a husband for a wife. And this is to be marked by receiving visitors and condolences and increased devotion and prayers, not just for gatherings which may have a social purpose. Turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all times, but particularly in these difficult times, it is a key mark of our returning to Allah in all aspects. So when a misfortune strikes, Allah says, we say, lo, we are Allah's, and lo, unto Him we return. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees us that surely we shall test you. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَالنَّقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. We shall indeed test each one of you with fear and hunger and loss of wealth and lives and the fruits of your labor. And then He gives us the glad tidings. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. But give tidings to the steadfast, those who in times of difficulty turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in steadfastness and patience. So brothers and sisters, as we remember the trials that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will indeed visit upon us to one degree or another, we need to be a part of this returning to Allah with patience. And of course, meeting and offering condolences to those who are going through difficulty, that is a formal obligation. The Prophet ﷺ said, every believer who consoles his brother in distress shall be dressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in apparel of honor on the day of judgment. So this is an obligation that one takes upon and shares in the grief. And there is the etiquette of condolences to be taken into account, that we do so without intrusion, without inducing added grief. We do so to lighten their distress. We induce patience and constraint, and we remind the suffering of the trivial nature of this life, that all belongs to Allah and we are to be patient with His decree. And we offer hope of mercy for the deceased. And inshallah, the hope of being reunited with the loved ones on a day when there is no parting afterwards. Ittaqullah wasbir. The Prophet ﷺ showed this. Have patience and have faith in Allah, be aware of Allah, be wary of Allah, and then have patience when you face these difficulties. It is important, brothers and sisters, as we face these challenges of difficulty, of loss of loved ones, that we keep in mind that in the sabri inda awwali sadama, that indeed patience should be displayed at the beginning of our afflictions. That is an important mark for us to keep in mind. The moment that we appreciate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken something away from us, that's when one expresses patience. And let us remember when the Prophet ﷺ said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away from His believing servant a beloved one, and he accepts it with sabr and ihtisab, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts no reward for him less than Jannah. So the focus is to be on sabr, ihtisab, istirja, patience, reward, and forgiveness. And brothers and sisters, the prophetic words of condolence, when he said, when he came across people who lost their loved ones, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you in the reward, was his dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you the best consolation, and may He forgive your beloved deceased. The wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ praying in these times, verily to Allah belongs what He has taken, and to Him belongs what He has given. And for everything Allah has set a fixed term, so let us be patient and content. And brothers and sisters, as we prepare positively for the reality of death, we are a religion and a faith of balance. We are, at the same time, we are told we have no business wishing for death. Death is a reality, but we have no business wishing for death, because that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and power alone. The Prophet ﷺ advised his uncle when he said, do not wish for death. If you do good and live long, your good deeds will multiply, and that is better for you. And he said, if you are not good and your death is delayed, you may seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness in that time, and that is better for you. So brothers and sisters, as I end, let me once again focus on the fact that this reality of death is something that approaches and is approaching all of us. It is a necessary transition, and I and you need to be preparing for it, and preparing for it with our families, with our children. This needs to become a matter, a topic which we are not concerned about discussing at the dinner table, and we need to be talking about it. We need to have serious discussions with our family, with our spouses, our children, and even close friends about our death and what that entails. Serious thinking and conversation and planning with oneself first. How prepared am I for my own meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And what changes are needed for me to be better prepared in the few moments or days or weeks that may be left for me on this earth? How prepared is my family and my affairs for my departure and absence? And brothers, as I end, I remind us all, let us begin practical discussions about who is going to be managing the arrangements for my death, for our deaths. What are the arrangements that will be made for our ghusl, where, when, who, and how? What is the immediate support structure for our spouses when I am dying, because I know I will be dying? What is the Salatul Janazah? How will the arrangements be made? Who will do it, where, and when, and how? How often we go to the Salatul Janazah, brothers and sisters, and we still need the reminders from the Imam as to how that Salah is done. I need to be prepared for my own Salatul Janazah. Who's going to do it? Do I have a Saleh son or a close relative who's prepared enough to go out and pray for me with sincere feelings and dua? Not a stranger praying for me. Of course, if we have a pious person leading, there is sawab in it, but we need to have our close ones prepared for it, brothers and sisters. Burial, where are we going to be buried and how? We need to know the details about the ghusl that is to be performed on myself and my spouse, my children, and how will that be taken care of? And brothers, we also have to make sure we have prepared our family for our deaths, the finances, where or what is going to happen to their homes, their residence, their medical, their insurance aspects. Are we prepared with our wills? All of these are important aspects. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us truly appreciate this most significant reality of death. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us truly be prepared for this reality. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us approach this reality with awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but with expectation of His justice and His reward. Let us remember the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for His words are the truth, the supreme truth. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. Wa nafani wa iyyakum bi ayatihi wa dhikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem malikul barr raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, fa ya ma'ashara al-muslimin. Qala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala al-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin bi'adadi man salla wa sama. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد بعدد من قعد وقام. اللهم صل على جميع الانبياء والمرسلين وعلى سائر الصحابه والتابعين وعلى عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين. اللهم قوي ايمان اخواننا واخواتنا في كل مكان، خصوصا في فلسطين وسوريا واليمن ومصر والجزائر واندونيسيا وماليزيا وتركيا وايران وعراق وهندوستان وافغانستان وهند وباكستان وبنغلاديش وكشمير وفي كل مكان. اللهم قوي إيمانهم وثبت أقدامهم وانصرهم على عدوهم. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم ارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين. اللهم اغفر لكل جميع موتى المسلمين. اللهم اغفر لهم وارحمهم واعف عنهم وعافهم. اللهم انزل على قبورهم الضياء والنور والفسحة والسرور برحمتك عليهم يا غفار يا ودود. اللهم ارحم والدينا ووالد والدينا ومن له فضل علينا في الدنيا والآخرة. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. عباد الله، رحمكم الله عند الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر. أقيموا الصلاة.